I want you to take a moment to think about the last piece of art you really noticed. Was it a painting by an old master in your city's museum? Or a striking piece of graffiti underneath a bridge on your way home from work? Maybe it was even a drawing by your niece or nephew. What did that piece of art tell you? Art can be said to be many things, whether it is a historical account of events, creative expression, or a form of protest against social injustice. But regardless of the subject, one thing that art always does is inform us of something. That could be the artist, a time period, the environment, or even ourselves. As an artist, a poet, and an educator, something that I am constantly thinking about are the ways in which I'm informing others and the ways in which I am staying informed. Many of my paintings and other works are inspired by philosophy, human ecology, and relationship to space. But more importantly, are the experiences that give me inspiration to create such works. As a community-based artist and artist in residence in many major institutions, I spend a lot of my time in parks, libraries, schools, museums, and all of the places where communities are formed. With the rise of social media and the internet, the world has more access to art and to artists than it ever has before. Personally, I'm constantly checking on the things that my community is reading and visually consuming. And in a world where there's so much media to consume, oftentimes the things that are labeled as important and relevant, and often even factual, have much less so to do with the inherent qualities of that thing, and much more so to do with where the public places their attention. Now, as a young Black artist, I was extremely excited when I noticed that over the past decade, and especially the past 2 years, that Black arts were getting more notoriety than ever before. This was a great thing, right? But as I took a step back, I began to notice a troubling theme. Many books on the bestseller list about Blackness were also about trauma. Many of the most watched films starring Black actors also contain trauma porn. And many exhibitions by Black and brown artists in major institutions were also focused on suffering. While understanding and reckoning with trauma is undoubtedly important, it is certainly not the singular nor defining narrative. And as I went out into my community and I spoke with friends and other artists, I found that I wasn't the only person who had noticed this. And as I began to do research, I would come across articles like 10 great books to read this fall that aren't about Black pain, or 15 of my favorite films on Netflix that don't contain trauma porn. Why weren't joy, innovation, eccentricity, and genius within the BIPOC communities getting the same amount of attention that trauma was? I was worried that if this theme continued, we would have a troubling association on our hands. That being that if Black art equaled traumatic art, then the Black experience would also be viewed as a solely traumatic experience. Now, many of you may be familiar with the saying that there are no new ideas and no new stories to tell. And while I don't 100% agree with this sentiment, I do believe that it begs the question of what role art plays in the 21st century. More importantly, it causes me to ask myself, what do I need to do to create meaningful work in the modern world? And as I thought about this, I came back to the thing which I'm certain art will always do, which is to inform. Now, if you are an avid consumer of literature, you might be familiar with an author by the name of Eudora Welty. Eudora Welty was a Southern Renaissance writer born in Jackson, Mississippi in the 1900s. Many of her works focus on her life growing up in the South during that time period. And she won many major awards in her life, including the Pulitzer and the Presidential Medal of Honor. But in 1965, Miss Welty was questioned as to what she was going to do as a white, female author in the midst of the civil rights movement. Was she going to take a stand? She responded with an essay titled "Must the Novelist Crusade?" In it, she says this, and I quote, "Integrity can be neither lost, nor concealed, nor faked, nor quenched, nor artificially come by, nor outlived, nor I believe, in the long run, denied. Integrity is no greater and no less today than it was yesterday and will be tomorrow. It stands outside of time. Morality, as shown through human relationships, is the whole heart of fiction. And the serious writer has never lived who dealt with anything else." Miss Welty posed the argument that as long as art portrayed truth, then it would always be important. And while her words might be seen as a product of her own time, I believe that she speaks to the universal positionality of an artist. Her words stuck with me as I tried to create authentic and honest work in my own practice. This ultimately led me to question who I was creating art for, what I was giving my attention to, and where I was drawing others' attention with my platform. What were the stories that needed to be told? Yet instead of speculating as to what these answers might be, I decided to work outside of the vacuum, to start using my art to ask questions. Because I was certain that once I started asking questions, my community would give me the answers. I needed my art to shift from being a unit to becoming an ecosystem. This ultimately leads me to my current and ongoing project, Sanctuaries. Sanctuaries combines my work as an artist, a writer, and a community member. I'm interviewing 10 BIPOC creatives in different fields on the nuances of their lives, their sacred spaces, and its connection to their own artistic practices. I'm asking them to be vulnerable with me, to invite me into their sanctuary, to interview them on this space. And as I enter these spaces, I am sure that I will come across a variety of stories, and some of those might contain trauma. But what is most important to me is that whatever their story is, that it is sincere and that it comes from their own mouths. These interviews will ultimately serve as inspiration for me as I do a series of oil paintings on their sanctuaries to be bound together in the first copy of my own book by the same title, along with photographs writings, and most importantly, their testimonies. This will serve as an authentic reflection of the lives of Black and brown creatives outside of any existing overarching social narratives. Intimate, unfiltered, and sacred. As my community, you are all inherently collaborators in the hard work that is art making and truth seeking. I believe that if we want art to remain important, to be an agent of integrity and a catalyst for community building, then we must all be aware of what we are informing others of and where we are placing our attention. And so I ask you today, and I challenge you, that as I continue this work, that you be considerate of what your own sanctuary might be, that you be observant to your own life and to the lives of those around you, and that today and every day moving forward, that you ask yourself, where is my attention? Thank you.